And when I came here to Ukraine 4 years ago now, there were a few books I brought with me. Of course, you have to have the Counterinsurgency Manual, David Petraeus, um, and then this book, especially with all that we're seeing in America. It's very important that we pay attention to what the standard used to be. Of course, I had to have some Twin Peaks music because it's time for some damn fine coffee. And actually, I want to thank my team down the street who made sure that was available on short notice. We have a lot in the news, as you know. There are people here that pay attention to my posts on a regular basis, and there's so much that we have to cover. So we'll let Frank get in here and see how things are going. Make sure that you're announcing to your friends that we're getting ready to go live. Forgive me, I'm going to set my camera up just a little different because we'll have two people in here in a second to join. Blackout right now. So we are running on the reserve power system, as we often are. And the news is Russia will still be Russia tonight. And that means there will very likely be missiles and drones trying to take out our power facilities and kill Ukrainians like they're always trying to do. That's what Russians do. So I think I will also, at the end of the discussion and program tonight, we may take the time. I may boot back up and keep going with some friends. But next week, I'm already scheduled to have Craig Unger. He couldn't join us the other night. Communication, or we just couldn't coordinate our timing. Damn fine coffee. And we have Alexander Hara, my friend, who is going to come talk about security guarantees and how things are happening at that level for Ukraine and America, also Europe. And then on Thursday next week, we'll have John Fugelsang, one of my favorite comedians and a brilliant, super, super witty man. I've always enjoyed watching him take on the intellectually abusive religious right and how they hijack the Bible to weaponize its passages against everything. And if you notice, for instance, a lot of the people who go up and throw their biblical references at you, like Mike Johnson, they don't live up to what those passages say. I'm going to be very clear with you. I'm a trained Buddhist, 6 different traditions, if you will. But I've read these books since I was a child. I read them more as an academic and someone who's interested in what it says without some sort of fideism where the passage is true because the book says it's true. Because the Bible says it's so. Okay. But I respect religious people. I respect people who have faith. I've always felt that way. I feel people have their relationship to the universe and the cosmos that we live in. But I can read, and as a journalist, citations, notes, and accountability for facts, that's a thing. Tonight, I want to preface this by saying that I met Frank Figliuzzi covering what he was doing in podcast with my friend Naveed Jamali, and I had a conversation with them after the broadcast about pending election violence and the groups that I was monitoring who were definitely planning on interacting at a violent level with your vote. I'm very kind with the word interacting. You see what Steve Bannon is doing now. He's trying to do it all over again. They cannot win at the ballot box. And because they can't win at the ballot box, they have to cheat. They have to intimidate. They have to bring their boot kickers to come out and aggressively, violently attack our democracy. So where we left off in October 2024, days before the election, in fact, it was Halloween, we had just had a discussion about where we had been before the Biden administration. And a lot of the concerns that we saw heading into the election era, the election season was over. We were waiting on the votes to come in, the votes, the votes to be cast on the election day itself. But we could see the momentum. And of course, many people were hoping that there would not be a Donald Trump problem. But a year later, there is. So when Frank joins us, we'll go through some of the things we've seen in the last year. And I hope that we learn a lot. I know that when Frank's around, we will definitely learn plenty about his insight. And the past year has offered a chance for former officials like him to kind of like reevaluate their experience in the Justice Department. For instance, there are people like Glenn Kirshner who are over on this platform now. They used to be on television as everyone's personal expert, and now you can reach them directly. They do live streams. Never miss one of Frank's live streams. It's really, really insightful. He did one last night about the kidnapping or something, we're not sure what, with Savannah Guthrie's family. He offers a lot of experience about how investigations unfold. So as we watch, from his experience, there are a lot of things we can learn, and we're going to have him join us to share some of that with you now. We'll see if we can get his co-hosting is there, I think. Frank, I'm not sure if you're getting your co-host link, but I see you. I see you. And you got the new set?
I do. Yeah, it was time for a change,
Yes. I originally was going to do this Studio One direction, and then I saw you change yours. I said, I have a better idea.
Yeah.
And that's how we wound up with this.
Yeah.
So welcome. I was just telling the audience about how we first met in September 2020 about the election violence that was coming. And just a reminder of where we were in days before the election. It was Halloween 2024. We were doing a space and kind of predicting where things would go. So let's ask you, how's the last year been?
Oh boy. The last year Chris has first, thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this kind of independent journalism. I think it's going to help redefine. You're part of a movement. I'm part of a movement that's helping to redefine
Right.
people consume their news and their analysis. There'll be lots of mistakes and successes, and that's how it's going to go. But
Right.
the short answer to how the last year has been is complicated and multifaceted. It's been just significant for change,
Mm-hmm.
my own life professionally, and in the life of this nation. If there are folks remaining who either haven't plugged in to what's happening to our country and its future, or have decided actively to turn away from it, then those people are going to regret where we end up and not being a part of resisting what's happening.
Well, I remember very well. We were talking about groups that were pending an attack on our democracy. Then we spent many, many months, all of us, watching the indictments unfold, the accountability unravel in courts, and then Donald Trump basically threw them all on the street to do his little bidding. Some of them are ICE members now. Some of them, we don't know what role they're playing. How dangerous is that we don't even know who's behind those masks?
You're raising a point that I think several months ago I would have avoided answering this at all costs, because I would have risked being thrown into some kind of conspiratorial nutcase category. but and those of us who are joining us know I'm I'm just a facts guy. I'm an evidence fact-based guy. But I will say this, the lack of ability we have right now to gather the facts and evidence about who is behind those ice masks should be deeply troubling. And I say this because the kind of behavior I'm seeing from people who are purportedly federal agents is so anathema to what I experienced in 25 years as a federal agent that I am left, Chris, to engage in conjecture, educated conjecture,
Right.
that a couple of things are happening. One, we know this. Here's a fact. Here's a data point that we know. We know that DHS is hiring folks at such a rapid pace that they are not completing the vetting process. And by the way, Lord only knows what that vetting process looks like. I mean,
Right.
we've already heard that leaders in certain federal agencies are waiving polygraph requirements. Okay. We've heard solid reporting that DHS agency agents are showing up at whatever academy they've got left with less than full vetting and even criminal records. So there's only a couple of ways to go on this. One is some of those are absolutely felons and violent people who most Americans think would not qualify to be federal agents with a gun and a badge. And or with regard to the veteran agents who we hear, for example, were the shooters in Renee Good's killing and in Alex Preddy's killing. Then if they're veterans, then there's this is by design, what I call intentional aggression. They are following some kind of orders to do non-legal things. That's what I'm.
Well,
So that, I mean,
yeah.
that's
Well, you know this from your experience as a man of integrity in law enforcement, and I come from a progressive side that was always leery of the FBI for different historical reasons. Um, there's been a part of law enforcement and the military that has been extreme for a long time. They just needed the flag to move. I remember calling out sheriffs that had Punisher rings on. I go, whoa, whoa,
sure.
whoa, hey, what is that? Yeah, don't be
Right.
doing that. And for the or audience who might not know me, I did counterterrorism work as a civilian for 12 years, and I learned it the slow way. I would infiltrate those groups. I monitor what they were, and active if you remember the Boog report, the Boog threat report I wrote in summer of 2020, that was the third category, existing law enforcement that would be weaponized.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
I'm not surprised when I see someone who has 10 years experience
Yeah.
unleash that they've been
Yeah.
holding back.
For sure. For sure. When you tell people that they have absolute immunity, wrongly,
Hmm.
when the president of the United States says we will always have the back of DHS agents,
Hmm.
um, you've got Christine Ohm who seems to not know what she's doing. This is what you get, and it is no longer happenstance. No one can say with a straight face, "Well, these are aberrations." The kind of violence we're seeing, it's a lack of training. I'm done with that. I'm done with that, Chris. And let's go a step further. I've gone a step further, which is that this massive agency now we call ICE, which dwarfs the budget and the people of
Hmm.
listen to this, of all other federal law enforcement agencies combined, is not all about rounding up undocumented migrants. There's another agenda here, and we heard it from the mouth of Steve Bannon.
Exactly.
We're going to surround the polling places with ICE agents. It's a secret police organization.
And we talked back then about constitutional sheriffs, for instance, and those groups that were already a problem. What do you think people need to keep in mind when they're confronted with that?
I've written about the constitutional sheriffs. It's been a while since we talked about that. And, part of this is it's been a while since we've had to talk about constitutional sheriffs. It's been a while since we've had to talk about the Proud Boys. It's been a while since we've had to talk about the Oath Keepers. And why is that, Chris? Because they have become mainstreamed and part of the problem. So we've lost sight of them. And constitutional sheriffs, I know your viewers are savvy enough to know, they claim to answer only to the Constitution. They are elected, as almost all sheriffs are. They are elected officials. They respond only to the people, and they follow only the laws that they want to follow. And they don't, most importantly, they don't recognize the federal government. And so what the danger is there is they can say things like, my state legislature has passed a red flag law where I'm supposed to take a weapon from somebody who poses a threat. I'm not going to do that, right? Or
Right.
my state has said there will be no masks on law enforcement of any kind. I'm not going to enforce that. And that's a danger. And then when we talk about the midterms and elections, those are the people, in addition to ICE, that will be the ones, often in your county, in your state, the people who are carrying the vote results to some county headquarters to be counted. Guess who they are? They're your sheriffs.
And we're going to talk about one in particular when we get to the counterintelligence issue, Tulsi Gabbard included. But before we get there, there are officials that tried to stand up in the last few months to say, we're not going to be part of this. What's happened to those folks?
So are you specific? There's been a lot of those. Prosecutors, FBI agents, you're referring
Exactly.
to? Yeah.
Law enforcement, the blanket, the wall we keep praying is there. They're resigning, they're being overlooked, they're being fired.
Yeah.
This is catastrophic.
Yeah, I don't, this is good news, bad news, right? We still have ethical people with integrity in these agencies who refuse to do unlawful things. And as a matter of principle, are leaving in droves. And you need only look at now the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office. There's literally no one left with any experience to prosecute just about anything. And the irony there in that location is Trump kept screaming about fraud, fraud, fraud in Minnesota. And the top prosecutors, federal prosecutors in Minnesota, who were literally on some of the biggest fraud cases in the state, have now resigned. So there's your fraud plan right there. FBI supervisor in FBI Minneapolis has resigned under pressure to not work a civil rights investigation into the killings there by ICE. This just keeps going. DOJ headquarters is losing attorneys in droves. And so what's the end result of this? We're going to be staffed. The U.S. government's going to be staffed with a deep state like you've never seen before.
Right. The one that he was going to get rid of, the swamp that he was going to get rid of in the first term.
Yeah, he's created one, and they're not going to have any allegiance to the Constitution. They're going to be allegiant to him only. So people have often asked, Chris, how long will it take to get out of this? First of all, this is an open-ended problem. It's not like, what? Okay, if we win the midterms and we win these people don't go away. We have an entrenched insurrection movement in this country that our grandkids will be dealing with. And so I don't have answers on timing here. I simply don't.
I think that when we also look at the recent Jack Smith hearing, which was, I hate watching Congress go through those, it's almost like a dog and pony show, because there's the side that's basically looking for the gotcha questions. But at the end, Michael Fanone had words with I'm just going to call him what he is, a piece of shit, named Ivan Ranklin, who works with Mike Flynn. And knowing that McInerney and Mike Flynn and those guys are working behind the scenes with Bannon to really create a cognitive warfare plane that we have not had in our modern times is dangerous. But also the counterintelligence side of that, is always going off in my head. Who are they working with? Who are they working for? Or who are they benefiting?
Oh, Chris, obviously you've hit a sore spot with me. I'm the counterintelligence guy and headed counterintelligence for the U.S. government as the head of the counterintel program in the bureau. I am not convinced at all that any counterintelligence of any meaning is being worked by the U.S. government right now. What do I mean by that? Our adversaries, and we do have adversaries. We don't have
Right.
transactional friends. We don't have
Right.
we don't have situational friends who can cut a deal for the Trump family one day and then piss off the president the next day. We
Right.
have established adversaries who are out to hurt us and get out of bed every day trying to work against U.S. interests. Trump seems absolutely uninterested in that concept, but only interested in who is out there that can benefit me. But the idea that the U.S. government, per Pam Bondi, has disbanded, for example, the Foreign Influence Task Force led by the FBI, which is supposed to stop foreign interference with our elections, and the propaganda and disinformation that's pumped out by foreign intelligence services. We've seen it over and over again. They're not coming to work doing that anymore. There's been an election. Very senior executive has been appointed recently at FBI headquarters to, quote, be the election executive. What God's name are you talking about? And what else have we stopped working? When's the last time you saw a federal corruption case open on a Republican?
Right.
Only if the Republican pisses off Trump will you see a corruption case opened on your mayor, your governor, your congress member, your dog catcher, if they're a Republican. So you can sit here and say, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that Trump's in bed with Russia or in bed with China. It just means they think it should be a free for all. And it's a matter of how you look at things, how you look at the world through a different lens, Frank, a business lens, a transactional lens.
Right.
And my answer to that is yes, he's a businessman, a failed one, but he does want profit. The latest number, of course, is $4 billion that he's profited, and his organizations have profited just since he took over in January.
Right.
But the other way to look at this, two things can be true at the same time, is that the degree of influence these foreign adversaries have over him absolutely influences his behavior even to the point where it could be that he acts against U.S. interests. The latest example of that could, I don't need to tell you, you're sitting in Ukraine, my friend.
Right. For those who don't know, I'm broadcasting from Kyiv, where I have been for 4 years and watching this daily, 1,397 days of war. And my best friend Edward says, "Why do you throw oxygen on him? He was almost, so it drives them nuts to watch how Trump, my precious, my baby, you're losing oxygen here. Here's a mask."
Yeah, yeah. No one knows better than you in this conversation than what happens when a national leader decides to overlook slaughter and democracy in peril. Yeah, we are wide open. I have said recently, Chris, I think we are the most vulnerable right now than we've been in recent history. And I will include in that the period around 9/11. In the intelligence
Right.
community, I write about this in my book, The FBI Way. I write about
And everyone, please go pick that book up. It's a great read.
which you just happen to have. Yeah,
Just happen to have.
I write about what it was like to be in the intelligence community in the lead up. I talk about after, of course, but in the lead up to 9/11. And this has been well documented, but we were all called into meetings, particularly if you were in management. You were summoned to headquarters, to Quantico. If you happened to be in training at that time, here came the senior leadership in the intel community telling you. I'll never forget. I was in a management seminar at Quantico, And they said, hey, we're going to have a special dinner tonight. And everybody's like, oh man, the menu's going to be great. It's going to be steak and there'll be some wine and we'll have a guest speaker. And we're like, that's awesome. We, we sit down to dinner and no one could, once the speaker started talking, no one could finish their dinner. And what it was a senior intelligence official who said, we are going to be attacked and it's going to be massive. And they said that, this was the discussion. And it wasn't the first time we'd heard this, but to hear it from this guy and to basically have him plead with us to go back to our field offices and figure it out before it happened. He was talking about the chatter. They're talking in code, but we know it's bad. It's big.
Right.
And so my question, you asked about counterintelligence, and if you think I'm diverting from the question, I'm not. I'm saying,
no, exactly. All right.
what in God's name, if we're the most vulnerable we've been, cyber-wise particularly, I think, where is the counterintelligence effort to stop this? And of course, the problem is, well, the threat is us. The threat's us, and our guard is down. But if you're not devoting yourself to the Russian work and the Middle East work and the China counterintel work and the Iran counterintel work, you're going to get slammed. And that's us.
And you bring up something that really concerns me, that people don't understand how that works. If you think of how the dummy hack works, which is you don't need code, you need someone to lower all the shields of the phone, of the computer, of the laptop, whatever it is. And hey, you find that file, yeah, delete that, and the system goes offline. That's what I see here is that, little by little, those guardrails that would be instinctively up for our collective tribe called Americans is being reduced by influence operations. And those influence operations are hard for a lot of Americans who are very busy with a lot of, the Epstein files, the latest scandal of someone's sex, scandal in Hollywood, whatever it is, keeps them so busy. That's why I call it cognitive warfare, because that's what it is. How do we start getting people to wake up? And more importantly, to the conservatives that are listening or that we may talk to, that there are ways to talk to them about what happens to them if this continues.
It's a great question. Yeah, people do need to pay attention. I go about my life and do things like go to the dentist, get my hair cut. You get in conversations with people, and they tell you they're too busy, and they don't understand. And it's almost a sense of pride. I tune it out. I don't even know what's going on, and I get it.
Well, I don't do the news, right?
Yeah, I don't do the news is a big thing, which is why people like you, me, and many others are so important to reach people where they are. Yeah, paying for cable news, who can afford that? And so let me get to the question.
Yeah.
Do you remember back when there were some awesome stories done around the 2016 election? Someday there should be a movie. And it was about what NSA and CISA had to do, the battle, the battle that took place behind the scenes to push back foreign actors who were trying to meddle with the election. And we won. We won, but it was close.
Right.
And this stuff is coming from, you can look it up, comes from the head of NSA at the time, the head of CISA at the time. That battle goes on with every election. And it's in this next election, if we're not paying attention and we're not working it, and I don't think we will. I'll tell you right now, I absolutely don't think we will. This election the difference will be a foreign adversary assisting Trump. It will be. And the irony is, to your conservative question, one of the things I would tell Matt, by the way, nothing wrong with being conservative. But let's talk about MAGA. I would tell MAGA folks, listen, how about this? You might be thrilled that Putin is going to help meddle in the next midterms. How would you feel about China or Iran messing with Trump to the point he can't win. How do you feel about that?
Or look how Laura Loomer freaks out about Qatar.
Yeah.
What did they give Trump? A big jet plane.
And let's talk about Saudi. Oh my God. And the financial connections, and Trump just handing them chip technologies and AI technologies. So, to my conservative friends or MAGA neighbors, we just gave away cutting edge AI research and technology. You okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Gave it away, folks.
I think that reaching out to the people who don't think like we do is really important. I know right now there are people, I'm from Texas, so I have people who are MAGA proximate or MAGA themselves, etc. And I'm
MAGA
getting more
adjacent,
calls.
MAGA
MAGA
adjacent.
adjacent. MAGA coded is a new word. Um, and I'm getting calls from people saying, my cousin's out, my brother's done. He's not going to change a lot of his ways because that's the long-term path, but
Yeah.
he's burned out on the MAGA brand, burned out on the daily chaos, and he needs a normal life back. But more importantly, it's beginning to hurt the pocketbook.
You're on to something. I also am experiencing this. I have some folks in my circle who are wealthy
Mm-hmm.
and MAGA and voted for Trump every time they could, largely for wealth preservation. And they are now saying, and I'm very quiet. I'm just letting this play out when they make comments like, I don't know how this economy is going to turn around. Inflation's ridiculous. It's out of control. He's got to do something. And
Right.
I just smile, and I'm not going to get in their face, but they're figuring it out. And by the way, if it's all about the economy for them, fine with me. Fine with me.
Right. And that's part of the thing is that I think talking to their Maslow's, talking to their basic set of needs and seeing whether or not they're getting those needs actually met by not just Trump, because Trump is the metastasization of a bigger problem that's being used by a lot of folks trying to get their profit. The crypto market just collapsed, for instance, or
Which, by the
rebounded,
way,
whatever.
but for many of us, of course, no surprise on the news that the crypto market has collapsed. I call crypto, the currency of criminals. It's You're being duped if you're heavily into crypto. It's going to collapse, and Trump's heavily into it. And by the way, the downside of this collapsing is Trump gets more desperate financially. Who knows what his losses were? I haven't seen anyone, financial analysts come out and go, "Hey, here's what we think he lost in the last 24 hours." That makes him more dangerous, in my opinion.
Very much so. So one of the questions I want to ask you is about Elon Musk, and I love not being on that platform. You don't even have a Twitter account anymore. People ask where you're at. Why don't you come on Spaces? I said, I don't know if you noticed, a lot of people left, entirely canceled their accounts and left. And Elon Musk being the head of that, the Doge scams, the invasion of your Social Security records, and then of course him having so many contracts. Here in Ukraine, they just cut off Starlink to the Russians, and I just published an article that was in um, Kyiv Post that was about Starlink, and worked with some different Ukrainian experts who were really watching this for a while. And I'm a little surprised we did get that reaction. I'm not surprised that the new minister of defense, Fedorov, who's a young man, was able to secure an agreement to shut those things off. But there's chaos behind the front lines in the Russian core now because of it, and it took a lot to get that. Um, but
Chris, what?
most still, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
But no, take us behind the scenes a little bit. What transpired there to make that happen? What?
I think some of it was the push, the fact that it was surfaced instead of just kind of being behind the noise machine. A lot of us took the time to put that out. Even John Cleese, the actor from Monty Python, you know, these folks stepped up and said, "Wait a minute, you're empowering the slaughter of Ukrainians? Whoa!" And Elon Musk is very impulsive. Um, just reacted the other way. So I think action is important when you consider the now reaction on that area. But there's so many different tentacles to Elon Musk in the security field that I'm concerned of. His foreign engagements, his foreign entanglements are a
Oh,
threat to
oh my God.
Americans and others. Yeah,
He's got way too many defense contracts. Absolutely. Again, a guy who likely would not pass a real security clearance. Pete
right.
Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, Hegseth recently announced that Grok is going to be used throughout the Defense Department. We're going to war with Grok? Is that right?
I went to war with Grok over what Apostle Paul said in the scriptures, and I won that. And
Wait.
I'm stupid.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so right, this is a reference to how Grok gets it wrong frequently.
Right,
Yeah,
right. And if
yeah,
I argue with it, it'll go, well, yeah, you're right, because I know my stuff. So
right.
I know and to be clear with the audience, what I do is I take a topic I know very well. Like later when we're done talking, I'm going to talk about the Benghazi little charade that went on today. I happen to have worked that case at the time, and I know reporters at the time who were doing things on the ground. So I can argue against Grok from experience. And you used this phrase earlier, not just an opinion, but an informed opinion versus just an opinion. And Grok actually developed a, a religious epistemology that is stunning for a computer. Now, that's online with the public side of Grok on the chatter side. In the private side, if you don't ask the question correctly, it gives you junk.
Oh
If
yeah.
you ask it and you hit it with certain codes that say don't hallucinate, don't deviate, make sure you cite sources, don't
Yeah.
cite Wikipedia. Like you have to spend hours to get it to give you exactly the non.
Right. And at that point, how much time have we expended, and what benefit is there in AI? Yeah, no, and I'm deeply concerned that Grok is now embedded in our United States military, and we're not quite clear on what it's going to be used for, but none of it's going to be any good.
Let's talk about what's happening with Trump attacking the allies.
Oh,
When yeah,
yeah. Look, I
Biden had to spend a certain amount of time. Actually, we'll go back first. Let's do it this way. Obama had to go do the apology tour, right? After the era of Bush.
yeah,
And then Biden gets in office and he has to do the same thing.
yeah,
And now we have Trump back in office. Try to
yeah.
take Greenland.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking to a guy, 25 years in national security. I'm here to tell you that we need friends in the world. I shouldn't have to say this, but they have our back. The Five Eye countries,
Hmm.
almost nothing of any great significance on a global intelligence scale gets done without assistance, support, or even leadership from one of our allies or close friends in the world.
Right.
And I could give you case after case. And if you think, oh well, yeah, right, it's England, it's Canada, it's Australia, it's New Zealand. Yeah, no, I get it. It's even more than that. Did you see just the other day the president of Norway
Hmm.
talking about how he confronted Trump, maybe at Davos, maybe somewhere else, looked him in the eye, shook his hand, and said, "I'm here to tell you that we are the first ones to alert your nation when Russian subs are moving." Do you understand that? Do you understand you get that from us, from Norway?
Right.
That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And we share everything with these partners. And for him to write them off and for him to suggest to NATO that we might not even be there for them when how embarrassing when countries sent
Exactly.
their sons to die alongside our soldiers in the Middle East when Canada.
Rod Stewart, sir, I'm sorry, Sir Rod Stewart stepped up and said, how dare you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a disgrace. And Trump had to apologize. So I think King Charles mentioned this as an issue, and Trump had to issue a form of apology, which I'm sorry never comes out of his mouth, but he said something good about the British soldiers who died with us. So um, when you destroy those relationships, it takes years to get that back. It's not just a brand new president going over and saying, "Hey, new sheriff in town. All's good. We're buddies now. Think about the intelligence recruitments that have stopped, that they're not sharing with us, that we have no transparency into. So let's say the Brits recruit a highly placed Russian source, and Tulsi Gabbard says, "We're not collecting on Russia anymore." The president doesn't want to get briefed on Russia things. And that means that the Brits are like, "We're not good. We're not sharing this with you." And even when maybe our source is telling us about your risk that
Right.
you're facing. And even take it home, we're not sharing with others. And it's bad things. I hate to sound like the skunk at the garden party, but bad things are going to happen, Chris, inevitably
They
when
happen
this.
here in Ukraine. I'm pretty durable at this point after, like I said, 1,397 days of war. But there's one thing that triggers me. It actually did this at the first of the year in December. I got off a long train, and the thing that set me over the edge was Trump's on the phone with Putin. No, because it means missiles and drones that night. It means devastation that night. It always yields back all the progress made to hold the Russians accountable. It's a reverse course
But
at
you've
that
seen
point.
so there in Ukraine, you've seen that kind of correlation,
Yes.
contact between Trump and Putin equating to some kind of license to kill.
The energy truce that was going on.
Yeah,
I have a post in Kyiv Post this week talking about the devastation on the system, and one of the things I had to update was the energy truce because that lasted all of a couple of days. And Trump specifically said, "Oh, we were on the phone. It was nice."
right, right, right.
Okay.
Yeah,
They hit trains, they hit hospitals instead. They hit passenger trains I travel on. Maternity hospital in Zaporizhia. They've hit this before. But yeah, there's really a correlation between those phone calls and the Witkoff visits, and then an aggression by Russia, almost as if like, oh yeah, we're gonna be cool, we're gonna be cool, we're gonna be cool, we're gonna be cool, and
yeah. I,
it's basically mind screwing at a certain point.
I'm an avid reader of the annual national security strategy for the United States.
Mm,
That sounds
I just
like
read it. Right.
it sounds like it might be boring reading, but I assure you it's not. And I've actually contributed to it in the past when I was in the bureau. And this last one, Chris, was a doozy because it laid out if you want insight into Trump's mindset and who's feeding him this stuff. The national security strategy of the United States now reads something like this, and of course I'm paraphrasing. No more. There's no more world superpower. It's
Mm,
certainly us. We're going to go regional, folks. So the guys with the biggest stick, meaning the most powerful military, are going to control their regions. That's how it's going to work. We're not going to bother each other. But China, knock yourself out. Which by the way, they can only read as, "Oh, I guess we can take Taiwan when we're ready."
right.
Um, and we're going to take the U.S. We're going to take South America. It's our backyard. Latin America. We should care about that. And Russia, you've got the biggest going on there in Eastern Europe, and basically then proceeds in the next paragraph to slam Europe. I mean, and I have, by the way, I've never seen a national security strategy, which is supposed to be articulating what we are going to be doing, into slamming our best friends. And so Europe, you're falling apart. Europe, you've got too many immigrants and refugees. And
Right.
have a nice day. You're on your own. That I'm not kidding you. And let me, lest I forget the Middle East paragraphs.
Right.
With regard to the Middle East, it's transactional. We'll be looking for areas where we can do business together. That is now the national security strategy of the United States.
I feel strange sometimes when I agree with Laura Loomer for those triggers. I know there's a reason why she did. I want to go back here though to something about because especially because your career work. They announced today the arrest of a member of probably of Ansar al-Sharia out of Benghazi, a case that I know way too much about on a certain level. That's now 14 years old almost. And the amount of work that goes into getting outside help. How many times was the FBI sort of stuck on an investigation that if not for a colleague somewhere else that you could reach out to, an agency elsewhere that had at least shared interest of safety and security, that the FBI would have been stifled, since now we have this problem with Trump.
Oh, look, I'll say it plainly. In my career, there were times where we would have been subject to terrorist attack, imminent terrorist attack, lest one of our allies didn't help stop it. And by the way, tip us off to it and then help us stop it.
And also, for instance, arrests of Russian hackers and those who have committed crimes. You know, how could it possibly have been, carried out without that?
Crime is global. This is why
Right.
a lot of people may not know this. The FBI has 200 offices, last time I looked, overseas, abroad. They're called, it doesn't say FBI on the door. They're inside U.S. embassies and consulates, and it says legal attaché on the door, and that's what your business card says.
Mhm.
You know why we have them there? We realized decades ago that all crime is global, and we've got to work with those countries to tackle the problem together.
I want to address one thing before you go, and I hope you will come back. Of course, this is the platform where we're going to see a lot of changes in how experts are heard, journalists are heard, and a couple of days ago we heard that Jeff Bezos laid off 300 journalists, not just with the agency there, but also here in Ukraine. And I had just finished a conversation with Brian Karem the night before about consolidation of media and what it means for people. But since you're known for being on MSNBC as a expert in law enforcement, and you had like Glenn Kirshner, who was the prosecutor voice, and you had a lot of these folks that were the go-tos on those networks. We now get to see you directly. Let's talk about what that means, and I'm gonna remind all the viewers: follow Frank's account, subscribe, so that you basically are taking a vested interest in the voice that he brings to you. And what do you think about this new era of how we have to go direct to the
Yeah,
audience?
so I see it as a net positive in a number of ways, but there's also some negatives that I think people need to be aware of. And that is the positive is that we're moving away from corporate control, and no better recent example than what Bezos has just done with the Washington Post. That's an absolute disgrace. Democracy does die in the darkness, to use the Washington Post
We have
motto.
we have blackout, so I can relate.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as somebody said, look, if you want to get rid of the opinion page and those editorial staff, okay, okay. But if you're going to stop reporting on what goes on in the halls of Congress, if you're going to pull, and this is near and dear to you, they literally, a reporter in the middle of war in Ukraine got an email saying you're fired. I mean, I got missiles going over my head. Thanks. We're this is a design and a strategy. So, even more important to find voices you can trust. What's the downside? And by the way, I'm gonna look. This is going to sound shameless, but there's a price to pay for those of us who leave corporate media. There's a price.
Right.
People. I've had only. By the way, people have been great in terms of my following and helpful. But if you only knew the percentage of followers who actually pay anything,
Correct.
couple of dollars, it's a fraction. And I've looked across the board. Hey, is it me? No, it's not
Yeah.
me. It's like a tiny infinitesimal fraction of people. And I'm saying, look, did you pay for the newspaper? Did you pay for cable that you're not paying for anymore?
Right.
It's a few bucks, folks, and you got to do it. And boy, those people who are leaving the Washington Post, they're going to need to put food on their table. I'm not kidding.
Correct.
They don't get paid a lot to begin with. Okay, so what's the downside? Boy, there's a lot of danger out there in terms of when you lose the corporate infrastructure, you lose the big corporate legal department.
Right.
the standards department. So
Yeah, this actually related to, like, for instance, the Don Lemon arrest. There was Georgia, who's the other journalist that doesn't have, Don's bank account, and he's no longer with CNN, so even his bank account is limited. But you bring up a very good point that legal department jumps in behind.
yeah, you've got some backing there. And so, for example, I wrote a regular column for MSNBC Daily, which I enjoyed doing. And while I may have often complained about the editing, hey, Frank, say this differently. Hey, what they were really doing was protecting all of us from
Sure.
misinformation, from inaccuracies, right? And
Right.
amen to that. And now you've got to look for people to follow who bring with them that kind of standard and integrity. There's a lot of people calling themselves journalists right now. And by the way, I'm going to say it right here. By the way, I think you are a journalist because of what you do in Ukraine and the writing and reporting and coverage and photojournalism that you do. And if you aren't following Chris, you should. If you want to see moving video and photo coverage of Ukraine, holy cow.
Thank you.
But I'm not there yet. I'm not there saying I'm not sure that I'm a journalist. But here's what I have: 25 years of exposure to incredible reporting standards in the bureau. Right, when your sources are telling you things, you've got you got to have multiple sources. You've got to verify before you push
Right.
out as gospel. Then 8 years at NBC, I learned the editing and standards that they apply to stories. But be careful about following folks. By the way, there's some really young, sharp people out there now online, and some of them are very careful, and I know how to weed them out, right? And because
Right.
they show their work. As one of them said to me recently, and I'm going to have her as a
I
guest.
like that.
I'm going to have her as a guest soon on my show. Um, she said, for me, it's like in remember in math class in school where the teacher gave you credit for showing your work.
I was terrible at that. I walked up to the board, looked at it, thought it in my head, and wrote it out
Yeah,
over and over again. And I
yeah,
would argue with each other, but is it correct?
no,
But now I agree with you that I love showing the work. So if I talk about how money is funded and how it's used to help Ukraine, not only do I have NatSig Media, which is my articles, I built UA Mission, which is the raw data, and
right,
literally showed how we put that together. So
yeah.
again, to show the work.
Right. Yeah. I mean, a recent example, just for me, rather small example, but there's a lot of folks out there pretending to know a whole lot about Nancy Guthrie's abduction.
Mm.
Sources telling me this, it's this guy, it's that guy, it's that. And by the way, I've got the same, reach there. But there's only one thing I've reported that I thought was solid. And the rest I am keeping my mouth shut because it doesn't meet my own standard. Yeah.
Real quick to the audience, I used a phrase the other night with when I was talking to Brian Krem. I said that if you thought of it as nutrients and nutrition for information, there's the difference between empty starches and full bellies. And are you getting all the nutrients when you go out to eat or when you drink? Do you walk out dehydrated? I think news should be treated like this.
It's it has to be edifying. It's got to have all the elements, the micronutrients, although the food pyramid's been changed by RFK Jr. I don't know if that news reached Ukraine now. We were supposed to eat red meat now is at the top of the the top of the food pyramid. Talk about trying to kill all of us. Anyway, I digress. I like red meat. Anyway, um, yeah, and you know what? You gotta kind of pay attention to people with alternate voices too. There are really good platforms out there. The Bulwark, Lincoln Square,
Mhm.
that are mostly former Republicans who are fed up.
Right.
And you know what? Listen to what they have to say.
I'm going to be talking to Rick Wilson soon, and Fred Wellman and the guys over there. I'm bringing on Colonel Morris Davis probably next week
Yeah,
to do exactly that, because I remember when I used to see them on TV, go, man, why are you? And I had such contempt and I'm an independent. I appreciate being from Texas where we don't
Yeah.
have to choose a party,
Yeah.
but I would see them as like, you're just a party apparatchik. You're just a, and now I see what they've gone through, and I even had to text one time to Liz Cheney because I don't know if you all know this. I went after Dick Cheney pretty hard to put him in jail. And all of a sudden we were on the same side. We were focused against a common threat that was bigger than our problem. And I really appreciate Rick. I really appreciate some of those folks that are now really doing an amazing job of getting us, those who are not part of that party, to understand how they think, how they're operating, and we really look forward to having him and the other voices here.
Yeah, I've been writing, as you know, I've been writing columns for Lincoln Square. I think I've got 5 or 6 under my belt, and you can look them up. They're on my Substack as well. Yeah, it's time to find people who are rowing in the same direction, and regardless of other issues you may have with them, that's the key.
So again, do not miss this book. Do not miss this. Go put it on your shelf. Don't
You
buy a
know,
used copy. Get a real copy.
so just a quick note on that book, right? When I read it, when I wrote it years ago, and it became a national bestseller, it was an homage to what the FBI is and stands for, and how they operate under stress very successfully. If you read it now, if you pick it up and read it now, it's a treatise on what used to be, and what needs to come back. That's that story. And of course, my other book is Long Haul: Hunting the Highway Serial Killers story. Look, while we're shamelessly plugging me, Chris, how can people follow your work beyond this Substack?
Really, I'm going to be really on this platform, but chrissampson.com is my personal website that points to my other work. My photography work is there. Link to Samson Shots or NatSig Media, my articles. But I'm moving a lot of the content here, and I wake up in the morning on fire. Sometimes I pump out 2 per day because I have too many things happening all at once. And my way of getting it done is to just crash into the data, spend my time over the coffee, and get my aggression out at the keyboard. I love data work. And when I say data work, I don't mean like the technical part of code. I mean literally collecting all that work. I did book research for a long time, where I'm the footnote guy. I'm the pod of information guy, and all I'm doing now is synthesizing it under my voice and putting it here. And I tackle the things that, instead of irritating me, I say, well, what if all those countries in Europe said, you're off our base today. Sorry, Rome Statute's over. Go home. And then
Right.
it just becomes a day and a half of just crash coursing every comment from the Germans or the others who made a little utterance about that. And this platform is where I get to do that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
likewise, I will say to all my friends, don't miss not only Frank's written post, but I know I love to tune in and watch you talk with the audience. And you make a very good point that I grew up at KPFT 90.1 FM in Houston. And so many people listened to the station but didn't pay to the station, and we were constantly having to go on over and over and over again
Yeah.
to beg for dollars instead of
Yeah.
trying to get content out. So the
Yeah.
more people just say, I recognize the need to pay for it. I've been throwing my money at cable television, but
Right.
I know that if I don't do it here, that voice goes away. Then that's the way to look at it. Your investment in what Frank does, it keeps Frank's voice coming to us instead of having to go to a security job where your experience in that field, like you've done in the past, is
Well,
applied in that area.
I
Yeah.
can assure you this. I'm gonna keep talking until someone stops me. They're trying
Right.
to. They are trying to. But um, listen, folks. Chris will text me or message me in the evenings and tell me, they're under attack. The missiles are exploding down the street, across the street. And I just pray for Chris, for your safety. I do, and what you're doing is essential, and I appreciate you doing it.
I thank you, and I want to thank you for joining us tonight, and we'll
Yep.
have you back soon.
Thanks. Stay safe. Stay safe, my friend.
See you soon.
Bye.
So I'm going to stay with the audience just for a few more minutes, and while Frank goes on to get some things done and say, I really appreciate the amount of time that we get to share here. Don't forget to subscribe to the account, and don't forget to subscribe and pay to Frank's account, so we can keep going with this. And we will see you soon. This is live from Kyiv, joining you every few nights. Next week we will have Craig Unger. We will have um, John Fugelsang will join us, my friend Alexander Kara, and we will be back with you soon. Until then, take care, be safe, and look out for each other.